today, and I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm very inspired after hearing all of the great talks and the videos, and I'm honored to be the final speaker. Today I want to talk about 3 words, and these words are very simple, but they're very powerful. They're filled with emotions. Emotions that are strong enough to launch revolutions, to start wars, and to change the world as we know it. It's not fair. It's not fair. It's not fair. We've all heard these words and we've all said them. And as a mother of 3 beautiful kids, I can honestly say I hear these 3 words every day. And there's nothing that turns these smiling faces into anger and frustration faster than it's not fair. It's not fair, she got more cake. It's not fair, he gets to go out and I don't. It's not fair, and it's never fair. But it's not just kids who have these feelings. As adults, we experience these feelings of injustice all the time. And you can see it even in simple ways. Road rage. It's not fair, he cut me off. It's not fair, she stole my parking spot. We see it when we hear people concerned about jobs going overseas. It's not fair, they closed my plant. This fairness emotion is in the pit of your stomach, and it brings anguish and sadness. And of course, I didn't want that for my kids. I didn't want them to be filled with the feelings of injustice. So as a good parent, I decided I was going to make everything fair. I would just control the situation so that they didn't have to feel like that. But guess what? I failed miserably. There was no way I could control the entire situation. But more than that, I couldn't get them to change their perspective to understand that even though things aren't equal, they could be fair. And so I found myself saying, I'm sorry, life just isn't fair. And this is 3 other words that we live with all the time, and we hear it. And you know what they said? It's not fair. And I agree, and I think we all agree. And in fact, for centuries, humans have been fighting to make things more fair. We've done away with slavery. We've abolished apartheid. We have freedom of religion. Women have the right to vote. These have all been huge strides to making our world a fairer place. And I wondered, is this something that's innate? Is this something in our DNA? Or is this a social construct? Is it because of government structures or religion or education that we feel that we want to make things fair? And I'm not the only one who had this question. There was a researcher named Sarah Bronson who about 10 years ago did a study with capuchin monkeys. It's pretty famous. Many of you have probably seen or heard about this study. And she chose capuchin monkeys because they are similar to humans. Their social structure, the way they interact is very similar. So what she did was take these monkeys and taught them to do a task in exchange for a reward. You can imagine, change your perspective. So they had 2 monkeys next to each other in cages. They can see each other. One monkey does the task and is given a cucumber. And the monkey is perfectly happy to have the cucumber until he sees that the partner pair is given a grape. Monkey did the exact same task, but the reward was much better because in the monkey world, grapes are much more valuable than cucumber. So when the cucumber monkey does his task again, receives the cucumber, is not satisfied, throws it back at the trainer, starts yelling and banging on the cage, and I can only imagine is screaming, "It's not fair." And it shows that it's not a social construct, but it is an innate need in humans and animals. And they've done these studies now with dogs and birds as well. So we know that we have a desire to make things more fair. And it was very simple to take a smiling monkey and turn it into frustration and anger. Look familiar? This change is because of those emotions that we have inside. And yet, why aren't things more fair? Why do we still have injustice in this world? Why do we put up with it? Why do we still have a gender pay gap in every single country on the planet? Of OECD countries, the highest, the closest to parity is New Zealand, where they pay 95 cents on the dollar for women versus men. The United States is 82 cents. Japan, 74 cents. And at the very bottom is Korea at 64 cents on the dollar. That's less than 2/3 the salary of men. These injustices continue because we haven't been able to make change. And part of that is because of the way that we define fair. We define it in the dictionary as treating someone without any favoritism, treating them equally, treating everyone the same. And this sounds great, and it sounds like that's really what we want. That's what the monkeys wanted, that's what my kids want, that would be great. But this removes the idea that humans are different, and we have different needs. And so with this definition, what we create is this. We have all of our resources distributed equally, so it should be fair. But I think you would agree that this doesn't feel fair. We still have people that don't have access and don't have opportunity. So a blind equality is not necessarily fair. So we need to change the definition to include that we need to treat people reasonably and without trying to gain unjust advantage. And we need to use those same resources and distribute them differently so that we can create a world like this. And here, this is so much better for everyone. This is the kind of world we want to live in, where everyone has access and everyone has opportunity. So how do we do this? This is the hard part. This is where we need a better understanding of all the issues, what's causing them, why, and how we change it. So with the framework of 3 simple words, we can look at why, what, and how. Why do we have this injustice? What is it causing? And how are we going to make change? If we go back to the example of the monkey of equal pay for equal work, we can all agree that's what it should be. You should receive equal pay yet we have the gender pay gap. So why? Some people may say, well, it's biological. Women have to leave the workforce if they want to have children. Or they're more likely to leave to take care of relatives that need help. Or maybe it's because women aren't aggressive enough. They're not pushing themselves and pushing the limits and making their way in. Some may even admit that there's still bias, conscious or unconscious, that's happening and holding women back. And I think all of these are true. But I think we're missing half of the equation. And the fact is that the gender pay gap is not fair to women, but it's also not fair to men. The fact that men make more money adds pressure that they have to be the breadwinners. They have to get the next promotion. They have to stay late and impress the boss so that they can get a raise. They have to miss out on the ballet recitals and the baseball games. And so it's not an issue that's just not fair for women, it's not fair for men, and it's not fair for society. In every country, if women had equal participation in the workforce, GDP would raise. So this is an issue that affects all of society. And yet, what is it? What is the underlying cause? And this is where we have to really dig deep and understand the issue. Because it's not about pay, it's not about salary, it's about value. And the fact is that the work that women do is valued less than that of men. And there's countless ways we can look at this. A couple are across industry. So if you're a janitor, which most janitors are male, you make 22% more than a housekeeper, who are primarily female, even though the tasks being performed are almost identical. If we go beyond that and we look within industries, as women enter predominantly male-dominated fields, salaries decrease. Over the last 50 years, as more and more women have become designers and biologists, those salaries have decreased 20 to 40%. And we might say, well, there could be other changes happening that have caused that. Change in supply or a change in demand. But the opposite is also true. As men enter fields that are predominantly occupied by women, those salaries increase. Most recently, computer programming, which used to be a menial job held primarily with women, has changed. It's now dominated by men. Salaries have increased, and those positions are now very prestigious. And it's not just with jobs that we see this bias. If you look at how we measure productivity, we don't value a lot of the work that women do. When we measure GDP, we don't measure any work done within the home. That's work by women or men. But women still primarily cook the food, do the cleaning, bring up the kids. And all of that does not have an economic value that's measured. It's not on par with a real job. And so when we look at an issue and drill down to find what is the actual cause, and in this case it's how we value work and by who it's done, we come to the last question: how? And this is by far the hardest question, because it's not simple. It's not fair versus unfair. not right or wrong. It's not good or evil or black and white. This is where we have to identify who is going to give up so that others can gain. Because we have a finite amount of resources. And we have to decide how those are going to be distributed. And this is where we have the power to make a change. Because instead of saying we are going to sacrifice for someone else, we need to say we're going to invest in someone else. We need to say that I'm going to invest my time, my resources, my money, and my energy in making the world a better place. Because ultimately, the world that we want to live in is something more like this, where there are no more barriers, where everyone has opportunity. And so, we need to stop settling for it's not fair. And I challenge you to create new dialogues, to change your perspective, and to continue in the fight for finding fair. Thank you.